All
All
right.
right,
Welcome to the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with
man.
Dan Slowick after a week off. Dan, we are going to be recapping the NBA draft, state of the NBA landscape. It's been a couple weeks, and we need to talk about our Chicago Bulls, where they're at today with our special guest in a little bit. But first, I want to know how you're doing and what you're drinking.
I'm good. Enjoying summer here out in San Diego. Just recently moved, actually, neighborhood. So if you're in San Diego, familiar with it, I moved from Ocean Beach to University Heights, away from the water, which is a little sad, but we're in a pretty nice place over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what am I drinking? I had no idea this was happening until our friend Gavin, otherwise known as Pete Mikeezer, who's like really into the craft beer. He's also working over at Phase 3 now. So if you're over in the area in Illinois, go check him out. But he told me that a brewery here, North Park Beer Company, which I've been to plenty of times, it's a really good, they used to do a lot of German, but now they're kind of going into the hazies and all the IPAs. It's really cool. It's a couple blocks from here, really cool location. And then Hop Butcher for the World out there in Chicago teamed up together. And I'm like, what a perfect collab for two people that are located in San Diego and Chicago to have a beer. I guess in that community of like craft beer people, it's highly sought after to have a collaboration like that between these two breweries. It is called Chop Butcher. It is a triple dry hop double IPA with Simcoe hops, Simcoe Cryo hops, Wamea. I'm going to try all these, and Freestyle Rawaka hops. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm excited. I know Hop Butcher for the World, it did not have a brewery in 2021, a space, right? They're leasing out equipment. 2022, their goal is to have two of them open. One at the old location on Lincoln Avenue there from Half Acre, and the other out in Bedford Park taking over a Five Rabbit brewery. So be on the lookout for those brick and mortar breweries for Hop Butcher. And I'm going to drink the beer. Let's see how it tastes.
Hop Butcher is huge out here. I know. I was at a beer festival not that long ago, and there was a line like down the block basically for just Hop Butcher's beer. So highly sought after out here.
Ooh, 8.5%. Yeah, 8.5%. So it's not harsh at all. But when I was drinking it, you kind of can feel it in the back of your throat, almost like as you're drinking it. It's a little bit of a thicker.
Too hoppy for you?
No, not like hoppy, not like that pine cone-y hop. It's got a good haze to it. If you look at the color there, not really good for radio, but it's a really, really cloudy, real hazy beer. What do you got, man?
Nice. So total opposite end here. I'm going with a cider. The brewery and cider house I'm doing today is called Eris. It's in Old Irving Park, Chicago. Their name Eris was inspired by the eponymous Greek goddess Eris, who is notorious for causing mayhem. As the story goes, Eris threw the golden apple of discord into a party that she wasn't invited to, thus creating a chaotic scene as every goddess in attendance scrambled for its beauty. So how does Eris Brewery make an impression in a city of over 100 breweries, you ask, Dan?
I'm glad you asked. Yep.
Yeah. They throw an apple into the party by making hard ciders as well. So after years of planning, they opened their doors on the Northwest side in 2018. They were the first female-owned cider tap room in Chicago, and their food menu strives to be inclusive of all meat lovers, vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, gluten-free. But the drink I have here is called Straw Barbarella. It's a strawberry rhubarb hard cider.
Okay.
6.1%. It gets a 3.9 on Untapped. It's pretty sweet, fruity, crisp. All those things that you get from a good cider.
Seems like a good fall flavor. Anything with rhubarb in it, you're like, go to the corn maze and drink some rhubarb cider. Sounds about right.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I would say this would be great for fall. It is good. It's not too sweet though. Some ciders can be too sweet. But I'm a big fan. So that brings me to our next guest, and you might ask how I'm gonna segue him in here. He's actually from the north side of Chicago, from Vernon Hills. He's living up in Milwaukee now, though, a bit north of the city. He's Elias Schuster. He's the lead Bulls writer for Bleacher Nation. He's the host of Points in the Podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Schuster_Elias or at BN_Bulls for Bleacher Nation. Elias, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. This is exciting. I loved listening to your spiel there about the different drinks. I wanted to, actually, they both legitimately sound good. I would
try them out.
So that sounds good. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is fun. I always love coming anywhere to talk some basketball.
Cool. Yeah, I saw you kind of all over the place during this free agency, seeing a lot of posts from your Twitter handle, and just curious kind of how you got started over at Bleacher Nation. How'd that process? What was that process like?
Yeah, so that was it was just kind of, it was exciting to the way that that kind of ended up coming together for me. I went to the University of Illinois where I got a major in journalism and studied primarily sports journalism is what I worked heavily on. Kind of worked at the paper there for a long time. I covered both the football and basketball team while I was there. Started doing video work when I first got to the university, and then transitioned more into the writing. And so I just got a lot of multimedia work done while I was there. And when it was time to graduate and it was time for me to look for jobs, I was just applying around, looking for an opportunity. And I already kind of knew Michael, who I think you guys have had on the show. He does a lot of our Cubs work, and he's also our primary editor. And I just kind of got in touch with him my senior year of college, and he was there for a couple of years at that point. And just kind of like asked him about what the place was like, what the company was like, and that was around the same time they put out a help wanted sign for a new Bulls. They wanted to start a Bulls site and start talking about basketball. And I kind of asked him, I was like, "Are you gonna hire somebody right out of college? Can you, because they didn't really do that before." And he was like, "I don't know, maybe. Like, you could apply. We'll see what happens." So I just applied and went through the process.
See what happens. Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it was good. I mean, it was unexpected for sure. I didn't think that the opportunity would present itself the way it did. But
Nice.
They took a chance on me, which was nice. And now we've been together for a few years now. So it's been a handful of years, and it's been exciting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Covering football and basketball, I'm going to assume U of I football, there's not any notable players that came out of the years you covered them, unless I'm wrong. What about basketball? Any notable players? Was Io there?
So I only got Io's freshman year.
Okay.
And the team was bad at that point. So I did cover his freshman year while he was there. But the team was still nothing special. I mean, they didn't make the tournament, and I think they were still, several games below 500 or anything. So but otherwise, I mean, Malcolm Hill, I also covered his his tenure there, and
up
he
and
was
down
also
with the
on
Bulls.
Yeah, so he was a two-way player for the Bulls this year for about half the year, which was cool. So he was I covered him while he was there. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, I don't think otherwise I can't think of anybody else basketball who would have been.
Now was Io a big name his freshman year? I mean,
Yeah,
right.
He was Morgan Park.
Until,
he was
the
a
last couple of years. Yeah,
hot recruit out of Morgan Park.
Yeah. He was a big deal. I mean, locally, of course. And I mean, he was nationally, he got recruited by a lot of big schools, and he was, kind of a 5-star prospect. So definitely a bigger name prospect. I don't think anyone envisioned him being like NBA ready, or, he wasn't a one and done type player. So, yes, like I think if you were tapped into the recruiting scene, you probably would have like known him, but he wasn't one of those like super high profile, this guy's going to go one and done. So, but it was still a big deal that he came to Illinois just because, locally people were very excited about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise there was a lot of people who went overseas, like when I covered that play like professionally overseas now. But after I left, the school got a lot better on both, mainly basketball, but they got better. In both
they're
areas.
Still working on football, right? I'm on the record doubting Io's ability to become an NBA player, and I was pleasantly surprised last season. So let's talk about the team and talk about the NBA in general. Just had the draft not that long ago. Summer League has started out in Salt Lake City. Bulls play tomorrow, I believe, for their first one. We got to see Chet Holmgren. Any surprises that you saw in this draft, or any players drop or any players rise up? I know the Bulls' very own player was one of the fastest rising names, Dalen Terry.
Yeah, I mean, the draft definitely ended up it was definitely pretty crazy. I think there was far less trade action than a lot of people suspected there to be. But the top of the draft already right away kind of threw people off, just because Jabari Smith thought people thought he was going to go first, and then all of a sudden Paolo's going. So that, I think, immediately, just when you see the draft start that way, that it's probably not going to go according to plan, and in terms of what a lot of the mock drafts had to say and things like that. So you did see a lot of guys, kind of either drop a little bit further, or people, like you mentioned, end up going a lot higher than people initially expected. And Dalen Terry, who the Bulls selected, I wouldn't say it was a lot higher by any means, but he was projected primarily by a lot of like mock drafts, and then on a lot of big boards, he was similarly slotted of being in that mid early to mid 20s section, nowhere later than mid 20s, but or I would say around like 2021, 22. So he definitely went a couple spots higher than people expected. But I think that was a little overblown. Like I think Bulls fans in general, when the name came off the board and they didn't know who he was, it was like that.
Yeah.
They were like, I think there was that, and it's natural, but it was kind of the same thing with Patrick Williams when it happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
There's that instant reaction of like,
and Markkanen a couple of years before.
Yeah, and because your brain goes who, your brain also goes bust, and like so.
Right.
But in this case, I don't think that wasn't really the case. The draft already was a little bit weird, and Terry honestly was slotted to go right around that range. And there were reports after the draft that I think one reason that potentially the Bulls didn't end up trading back was because let's say they traded back with the Nuggets, who had 2 picks in the 20s. There's no guarantee that Terry would have been there if they traded back even 3 spots. So I think there was some, they got some sort of intel potentially that he was going to go in the couple spots after him. And if they liked him, you're only going to trade back if you feel pretty comfortable that you're going to end up still getting the guy that you want. And I think in this case, they just didn't see that as happening. So they took him where they could.
Cool.
Yeah. Where do you see him fitting in with this roster? I guess it's early. The only reports that I'm seeing are that he's just a gym fiend. He's in the gym all the time. Yeah. And of course, you love to hear that, but also take that with a grain of salt.
I was surprised they had him listed as a forward when I just saw like the Bulls tweet out like their breakdown of guards, forwards, centers kind of thing, and they had him as a forward.
Yeah, I think we kind of saw last year, and I mean the NBA in general is we kind of see it going this direction, right? Like it's a very positionless league. So I think the Bulls especially had that going last year. They played, like Javonte Green at the 4. They were playing like sometimes Caruso was playing power forward. So like they're very open to just kind of playing whoever they want together if they feel like it fits. But with Terry specifically, he can be, I think, he probably projects to be a wing in the NBA. So I think like small forward kind of makes a lot of sense for his position. He's about like a 6, he's 6'6". So he may not be the tallest, but he's got a 7-foot wingspan, super long. And he may not be the most, natural. I wouldn't call him the most naturally like raw athletic player, unlike, like a Patrick Williams. That was a big thing. Like he was super athletic. I wouldn't say Terry is that crazy athletic player, but he has a really great build, a great frame, and he's also just very energetic, very hustle player. So when I see him fitting in on this team, I think he just kind of reflects guys we've seen them go after before already, which was, look at like last year they used Javonte Green, right? Like Javonte Green, he may not be the size that you want at the wing or like playing at the 4 sometimes, but he just works his butt off. He has a ton of energy. He's
5 Javontes out there.
Yeah, exactly. He's athletic. Like, so they just kind of like, I think that style of player, and it's hard not to. I think he's somebody that can just fit in where he's a plug and play guy, right? And he's also one of those guys that I think at number 18, he's the kind of player you're looking for in the first round, just because he's a star in your role kind of player. And he's not a star, right? Like he's not going to become a star. If he did, that'd be awesome, but he's not going to become a star, but he's a star in your role kind of guy. So I think they just see him as a versatile player who we can slot in plug a bunch of different holes, because he also does have some offensive capabilities, while there are more questions on that end of the floor about what he might be able to provide for you offensively. His jumper is a little bit questionable. He does have like a great basketball IQ, great feel for the game. His passing is incredibly impressive, and we know this front office really values ball movement and high IQ players. So yeah, there's no defined role I think that we can say that he's going to have right now, but it's because there's a handful of roles that he could potentially slide into when the season starts.
Yeah, I was definitely impressed with the passing highlights. That was one thing that stuck out to me for sure when they drafted him. So no trades for the Bulls yet. I mean, there's been a ton of talk of so many different trades. The Rudy Gobert one, I think, was the biggest one. But then there was word that
still out there.
They didn't want to trade Patrick Williams, right? And that was the big holdup with the Gobert trade.
Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, I think there's probably a little bit more to it than just, we don't want to trade Patrick Williams. I think at the end of the day that we all know how much money Gobert is owed. I still think I probably would have done a deal. I think now that we've seen Minnesota, what they gave up, there was no way a deal was ever going to get. Yeah, it was like 4 players and like 4 first-round picks and a pick swap. So, and that's the thing. Like if Gobert's going for that,
while having Towns on the roster, it's like, what are you doing?
I know. If Gobert's going for that, I have no idea what KD's going to go for. But I think what we saw, and I kind of wrote about it today at BleacherNation.com, like that package immediately took the Bulls out of the picture, and any team really, because no one was going to pay for it. So we can talk about, like, I think it wouldn't have been necessarily a bad move for them to make, but it was a move that ultimately they just weren't going to be able to, because they didn't have the assets. And also they should have never, I don't agree with Minnesota giving up that many things for Rudy Gobert, and the Bulls should have never done it. But yeah, I think that rumor was always interesting. I think it just it kind of speaks to this front office always looking for opportunities to, make an aggressive move if they can. In terms of the Patrick Williams thing, whether or not they were going to include him, I think, it was probably a lot of leverage, like back and forth, like doing the most they can not to have to include him. But maybe at the end of the day, if like the negotiations dragged on, the Timberwolves never came in, maybe they do, go for it and include him. We'll never know exactly what it is. Because at the end of the day, I do think Patrick Williams, you do give him up for a player of Rudy Gobert's caliber. Like, if you're not giving him up for a player of like that status, then who are you?
Yeah.
And I don't think he is necessarily untouchable. But I do believe in what he can provide this team moving forward. I do think he could take a leap this season. So I do understand at least some hesitancy from the front office to
he's got to be an all-star caliber player in his career for this for them to sit on him right now this offseason. Like, that has to happen. Yeah.
For you not to move him for a player of, of Gobert's caliber. And the reason I kind of say it like that is because I can understand not wanting Gobert just for other reasons of like, oh, the paycheck is huge. You don't want to give that much money to an aging center.
Sure.
Like, you also don't know exactly how he's going to fit with Zach and DeMar in terms of the spacing on the floor, and he clogs the lane up for them. So there are reasons not to do it. But if we're just talking about like an all-star, center, 3-time defensive player of the year, someone of that status, like, you do get rid of a young, high upside player like Williams to acquire one of those players. And the only reason you don't, or you're hesitant to, is because you do believe, like you just said, that he could become hopefully an all-star type player. So we'll see. This year is going to be huge for him. I think it's, I'm a little worried the pressure, they put a little too much pressure on him, not because I don't think he can handle it, but because it's going to make fans, really expect a lot from him this year, when we might have to temper expectations just because of how much time he missed last year. Like, that's a lot of time to miss in your second year to get the kind of development that they need him to get. So we'll see how it goes. But I do think I am still high on his capabilities. I just don't know if it's going to happen as quickly this year as people might want it to.
Bulls fans are not a patient group, especially right now with how this
Chicago
roster
fans.
And how this roster is created with DeRozan on there. It's like, all right, we got like 3 years, with last year being the first year. So we got the next 2 years of like that kind of DeRozan's window.
Right. I do think
he's going to be as efficient as he can be, so Pat needs to step up.
Right. No, 100%. I will. The thing that I'll speak to about that is I do believe that he'll actually age better, like, than some people might think. Like DeMar, I think he's going to age better than some might think. His contract is 2 more years, and then maybe they give him another contract after that. I think he'll continue to be a pretty reliable, like, secondary scorer. If you think about the way he plays, it's all based off. Yeah, it's get to his spots. It's footwork. It's good ball handling. It's kind of just like high efficient. And he also, we all know he just drains like highly contested shot after shot. So like, that's just stuff that's not going to change, I think, as he gets older. I'm not saying we're not going to get what we got last year out of DeMar. Like, you're not going to see that, I don't think. But can he can he get you like 20 points per game for the several more years to go? I think so. The Bulls are banking on him staying there and Zach continuing to go up, right? So
right.
That's what they need out of Zach. And then along with that, Patrick Williams, coming into the fold too. But it's a lot of it too is less on, I think, DeMar, he stole the thunder this year, and rightfully so. But the Bulls' expectation is for him to kind of decrease a little bit probably, and then for Zach to step it up even more.
So is this Bulls team going to be better? I mean, the moves that they've made do not suggest that this is going to be a huge leap for this team. What are the expectations? What should Chicago fans have as expectations for next year?
First round bounce again?
Yeah.
Well, I don't blame anyone for. I've already expressed it at Bleacher Nation too. I'm not thrilled with the way that the free agency period has gone thus far.
Mm-hmm.
I always get to drop the disclaimer. You never know. I mean, there's always possibility for trades. It just seems like the problem and the very annoying thing is that the ownership, right, they don't want to step into the luxury tax,
right?
And they still have roughly right now, as we're recording this, maybe some big move happens overnight, but they still have $7 million of the mid-level exception that they can use, but they're, I believe, $1.5 million away from the luxury tax. So they don't want to even touch that because they don't want to have to pay extra money. And the problem is in today's NBA, you have to do that if you want to really improve and really become a contender. So if the ownership isn't allowing them to do that, I believe that the front office has probably pushed a little bit for it. And it seems like ownership is not letting them do it right now. Like there's going to be a ceiling in terms of how much you can keep building. Now, with that said, you ask if they're going to be better next year. I do think there's still potential for them to be better because what the front office is banking on or what they're going to have to bank on because of the not spending more money is health, right? They're going to have to, they're banking on health. And I do
Lonzo, come on. What is going on with that knee?
I know. So and if we do think about it in that way, where it's like, well, banking on health isn't the safest bet. The safest bet is adding more talent, spending the money, and building your depth. But if we're going to go for the lower, the worst margin for error with the health thing, if they do stay healthy, I do think they'll be better than they were last year, just because we've seen what this team can do, and also we can't underestimate another year of those three players, DeMar, Levine, and Vooch playing together. And I know Vooch frustrated a lot of people, but at the end of the day, like he's adapting to a new role, and he's also learning to play with two other all-stars. So it's hard for me not to imagine there's at least some improvement from that core three in terms of how to more organically play with one another. So I'm not worried. I think there's a little bit of oh my God, now they're going to completely fall out of the playoff race, blah, 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 panic. But I don't see that happening. They'll still be a competitive team. The question is, can they make it past the first round, right? I think it's going to depend. It could depend too much on who did they draw in the first round, which sucks. You don't want it to have to be that, but that could be the case this time. So we'll see. But yeah, the free agency moves, they leave a lot to be desired so far.
Yeah, and those moves were Goran Dragic, who is he had ACL a couple years ago. He's playing over for his national team right now this summer. Really kind of on his last leg there. Veteran presence, cool. I like it. That's fine with me. But Andre Drummond is a player that Evan really adores.
Tell us about Andre Drummond.
As a rim defender and a rebounder. But if you follow a guest we've had, Stefan No, as well on this podcast, if you follow him, he tweeted out a video to where he was watching League Pass, where it would focus on players. And he was watching the Andre Drummond camera.
Just all heart and hustle out there.
The guy was walking up and down the court, turning the ball over, setting terrible. Is he going to be good? I mean, he played on a team. I mean, he's better than Tristan Thompson, right? He's still young too. Isn't he 28, 29?
Yeah, still one of the best rebounders in the NBA, right? And for a team that needed rebounding, I mean, that's the least I can say about that. I mean, I don't know how he fits with the rest of the roster. I mean, what do you think?
Because the roster's long and fast, and he is long but slow.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to do my best to articulate my Drummond thoughts because this is the first time I've been on a mic. I've written plenty about it, but now I'm going to have to try to articulate it. It's, okay, let's go back to the one thing that you said, Dan, right? Which is he's better than Tristan Thompson. So that's the first thing that we should all, that's at least the first positive. He's 100% better. Yeah, that's at least the first positive. He's 100% better than Tristan Thompson. And that's a good thing. So we'll start there. Whether or not, and okay, we'll also give another positive. The rebounding, yes, 100%. He's still for sure one of the best rebounders in the NBA. He's also a very, very good offensive rebounder specifically, and that's just a skill set that the Bulls completely did not have last year. So while rebounding is important, Vooch is a pretty good defensive rebounder, always has been. He's always, top past several years, top 7 in rebounding every year. But the offensive rebounding last year was an incredibly big problem for the Bulls. I think they were bottom 3 in offensive rebounding percentage. So adding Drummond in that department will be a big help because when you have scorers as talented as Levine, DeMar, even, having kick out opportunities for Lonzo, it's a huge deal when you can have somebody that can be out there and just give you an extra possession when you need it. And Drummond can do that for you. One other thing I'll say is Drummond's actually a better passer than some people might expect. He can actually kind of dish he can actually.
I would expect him not to be a bad one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he can pass the ball pretty well. And that's like I kind of mentioned earlier with Terry, going after Dalen Terry in the draft too. That's a big deal for this front office and this team is to find people who can keep the ball moving. And Vooch is actually pretty good at that. That was a skill set that he was still really good at this year while the scoring wasn't there. That was something that's always positive to have out of your center. With that all said, He is not the backup center that I would have thought that this team would want. And
Right.
we mentioned that they need a rim runner, right? He's not really he's not a rim runner. He can't space the floor at all. He also, and I get it. Sometimes your backup center, they're going to be limited. I get it. Like maybe you're not going to get a floor spacer, or I understand all of that. But they needed what they desperately needed the most, even more than rebounding out of their center, was rim protection. And while Drummond seems is this bigger, more imposing, frame, he is not a naturally talented rim protector or defender. I think that's a common misconception that we have with him, just because he is big and you see him and he's imposing and he does like kind of lug up and down the floor, but you're like, well, but it's hard to score on him, right? It's actually not that hard to score on Andre Drummond.
He's slow.
That's been a big problem the past couple of years. He's not good in pick and roll coverage. Vooch isn't either, so you don't have that player that can help you in that department. And he's not a massive shot blocker or anything. So I still worry about their rim defense. But we go back to the health that we talked about. It seems like they're just going to continue to bank on this idea that their perimeter defense will be strong enough to, even when Drummond's in there, it's like, we'll take the rebounding and then the perimeter defense will still help us, make life easier on him. And to Drummond's credit, since stepping into this backup role the past couple of years that we've seen him play, with the Sixers and the Nets and stuff, he actually has been, a better defender, a little bit better when there's been less on his plate. So I do think as a backup center, you can do a lot worse than him at this point. It's just there's going to be needs that I think Bulls fans think he fills that they're going to realize when the season starts that he doesn't fill exactly what they thought he did.
Right. If you follow, and just continue on backup centers. If you're following Bulls Twitter or anything right now, Marko Simonovic is kind of the hot topic because he showed up 35 pounds or 25 pounds heavier this year, and maybe what Drummond lacks in stretching the floor and outside offensive game, Marko brings. We also have Tony Bradley on the roster. Is Marko going to see any minutes? I think like the diehard fans are like Marko all day, put him on the floor, see what we got. Yeah. But is he really going to be a player?
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. I think it's especially around the summer league time, it's easy to like buy into a bunch of like guys that aren't actually going to turn into much. Like we're going to watch over the next 2 weeks, like guys on the summer league roster. We're wait. Well, that dude, yeah. Like I love it. It's a great time of year, but we're going to look like, we're going to see somebody. We'll be like, wait a second, maybe the Bulls should give him a 2-way deal, or maybe like this person. And like, so we're going to buy into some certain people. And I think with Marko, the kind of annoying situation there is that, that he has a full-time roster spot. Like, it's not like he's a 2-way contract. It's not, I guess he would be technically easily waivable if the Bulls wanted to, but they drafted him. They signed him last year to a 3-year deal, and he has a roster spot. So it's like, I understood last year was a development year, but it's like, I don't want somebody who's taking up one of those 15 spots, just sitting in the G League for the majority of the year. Like, so this year, the goal, I think, needs to be for him to be more readily available, be able to take the floor. Does that mean he's going to be in the rotation? I have no idea. I highly doubt it. But it's like, can he at least go in there and, like when Tony Bradley had to eat minutes last year, it's like, could that be Marko this year? Like, is he even capable of doing that? So we'll see. I do like that. Like you mentioned, his floor spacing. He does technically have that ability that was like kind of, especially coming out from overseas. That was always like part of his potential, like that
shoot the free ball.
Like, right. But in the G League last year, he still shot like 29%. So it's like, he did have those flashes, but it's not like he's shown it enough. And he also he kind of has a tendency to still foul a lot, even though he's bigger. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's anything we can bank on, but I'm sure I'll get too hyped about it over the next 2 weeks watching him at Summer League.
He gained 25 pounds. Come on.
I know. I'm going to think like, it's him.
That shape of his life.
Yeah, he'll also be able to play power forward. This is going to be great. He'll be
diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
So the big NBA question then is, where's Kevin Durant going to go? Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh, the more
Warriors,
you
got to sell your soul for him if you can.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and I said earlier, right? Like you see the Gobert deal. It's like, and don't think for a second, like Sean Marks and the Nets look at that Gobert deal and they're like, well, that's now the starting point, right? Like now that's what we're going to be looking for. Plus some all-star. We want all-star,
especially with Ben Simmons as your only piece now. So
like 4 first-round picks and 2 all-star players. Like who's going to do that?
I know. I have no idea who's going to do it, and I'm sure like it's going to be. It's easy to talk yourself into Kevin Durant. Like somebody will eventually do it. It's just with their asking price, I see this dragging on right now. And I think today I think ESPN and Woj like even talked about that. But I think like it's not going to shock me if all of a sudden he's back on the Nets next year, because I don't know I don't know what they could, who's going to give up everything. So yeah, it's a very complicated thing. The Warriors, funny enough, you bring them up, right? Like they do have a decent package.
Wiseman, Kuminga picks.
Yeah, they got a ton of young players, and if KD finally was like, you know what, screw it, I just, people are gonna like yell at me about it, but I just want to win championships. Like it wouldn't be a bad move for him. I'm sure they'd win a couple more championships. But yeah, that's a crazy spot. I don't know. And then the Raptors are always like a lingering team. We saw them do it with Kawhi, and they do have assets that are interesting as well.
Scotty Barnes.
They seem like they don't want to give him up. So I don't know. I can't give you a good answer. I wish I could. I wish I could tell you it was the Bulls. And I wish it would cost Tony Bradley and Kobe White.
But if your life depended on it, where is he going to play next year?
If my life depended on it, honestly, I would say if my life depended on it right now, I'd probably say Brooklyn.
Oh, it's going to be great. The storylines out of that, of him having to request a trade and then play the season out in Brooklyn.
If I had to give you a second one, I guess I'd probably still say Phoenix.
Because really?
Yeah, just because maybe they do it. They finally talk themselves into, I don't know. They have a Schuster. Their window is not much longer, So Phoenix was originally the team that like they thought might go for it. It seems like the Nets don't want Ayton plus like Bridges plus whatever, which I understand because it's like, it feels like you can get a better player than Ayton for Durant, but maybe you won't be. So I think Phoenix would be like my second spot.
Interesting. Do you think before we get you out here, do you think the Bulls do anything before the start of the season, or do you think they're happy with the way the roster is constructed?
Well, happy is a loaded word in this sense. I don't know if they're happy with
satisfied.
Like, we go back to the idea like I don't know if the front office is being able to do everything that they necessarily want to do. So I do think I'm gonna guess that like we see at least one more move. I think that maybe that comes in the form of like waiving Tony Bradley and then adding just like one more shooter or something, or maybe they do end up trading Kobe White, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But I just feel like there's at least one more move up their sleeve, and it may not be like a sexy move. It's just going to be swapping.
Waive Tony Bradley and sign Carmelo Anthony. What do you think?
Yeah, Carmelo Anthony. I'll take it.
I mean, he can hit me some open shots. So I would honestly, I would take it just because now you have Drummond, and then like you don't need Tony Bradley. So
that's who the Bulls are now. Old man Carmelo, old man Drummond.
I'll take whoever, if someone could just hit some open threes. But I would say there's one more like little non-sexy move, but something in there. And that's where I would put it. But otherwise, I think the like core of this roster, like the rotation we'll see next year, everyone that's going to be in it is already on the roster. And I know that's not the best thing, especially after last year. We saw them be super aggressive and change everything. But I think we just have to remember that last year was really fun. And, the team was still super fun. I know the end of the year was a little crappy, but as long as they're healthy, like the first kind of half of that fun basketball, you'll see that at least fun basketball again. And after 5 years of just crap and bad coaches and horror stories, that's at least nice to have.
A lot's hinging on Lonzo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a ton. Yeah, a ton. It's all, I think he's kind of he's the hamster in the wheel. He's the one who keeps everything moving on both ends of the floor. One of their best defenders, can guard multiple positions, but also offensively, he just gets them running in transition. So I definitely think if he's healthy, like that takes the team to kind of a level that they, not like a contender, but that's like maybe if he's actually healthy and playing well, that's like maybe they can win a first round series, I think, just because that's how good he can be when he's right.
All right. Love to hear it. They're going to be back in the playoffs next year. All right, Elias, thanks so much for joining us. Again, he's Elias Schuster at Schuster_Elias on Twitter. Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again to our guest today. He is Elias Schuster. Again, you can find him on Twitter at Schuster_Elias, or check him out. His Bleacher Nation handle is at BN_Bulls. All right, Evan, I got a would you rather. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. I'm excited.
All right, close your eyes. Take yourself back to when you're like 12 years old, maybe. 4th of July weekend just happened, right? So would you rather, 4th of July weekend, would you rather get presented? This is what you get to play with for the rest of the day. A box of sparklers, right? A box of sparklers, or a box of bottle rockets. Sparklers are handheld. You get to do what you want with them. Bottle rockets, light them off.
Please, I know what a sparkler is. Jesus.
Okay.
Uh,
What would you rather?
I think I'm a bottle rocket person. I always thought the bottle rockets were fun. A lot more dangerous, definitely. And that's, I think, the appeal when you're 12. That's just me though. What about you?
I think bottle rockets are cool. You get an old Coke bottle, right? Put them in there and you can start like almost aiming to where those are going to go. I do love a good sparkler though. Like I close my eyes, 4th of July. I'm like maybe down at my lake house down in like central Illinois, running through a park with a sprinkler on like a good like 90-degree July day. That sounds pretty nostalgic for me. I might go sparklers.
Okay. All right. I respect it. Both.
Respect the pick.
Yeah. Respect the pick. All right. So I got a fast fact too. It kind of goes with the show here. Bulls rookie Dalen Terry. We talked about him a little bit. He's going to be donning number 25 to honor Chicago high school legend Benji Wilson and current Golden State Warriors coach Steve Kerr. Apparently his uncle, a close friend, mentor, played with Benji Wilson at Simeon.
Yeah. I overheard they had him on the radio. I think it was 670 The Score. They had on his uncle out in Arizona who played high school basketball with Benji Wilson and kind of told Dalen at a young age kind of about him. And like, if you don't know Benji Wilson, he was 5-star recruit.
Look him up. Yeah.
Going to go to the pros, like one of the best, unfortunately gunned down at a young age. But yeah, I mean, it's stuck with him. Dalen Terry seems like a great draft with the Bulls. I mean, he's dropping like Chicago knowledge. He's doing the Benji Wilson thing. He just threw out the first pitch of the Sox game and he was talking about Frank Thomas. I mean, a kid his age didn't see Frank Thomas play baseball. So it's cool. I think he's buying in. He's a Chicago kid now.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Thanks again to our guest, Elias Schuster. That's been our show. For Dan Slowick, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.
Cheers.